Welcome to the May Madness Selection Saturday and the bracket reveal for both men's and women as all eyes turn to New Orleans for the 2022 CRC Championships. Hey folks, Dan Power here alongside Tournament Director Pat Clifton, former USA Eagle James Patterson, John Broker and Bree Kim will be joining us throughout the show as well. But Pat, the focus now is on the premier College Rugby Sevens tournament. It comes back and it goes back to New Orleans.
That's right, the Collegiate Rugby Championship, the granddaddy of them all, the big dance. Let's take you back to 2008, why don't we? 2008. There was no college sevens. The entire sector didn't really exist. There were no competitions. Then in 2009, the Olympics, it's coming. Sevens is being announced that it's coming back to the Olympics in 2016. And then the next year, the Collegiate Rugby Championship was founded. Since then, guys like Threaten Palamo helped Utah win the youngest guy ever to play in a Rugby World Cup. Then he goes and helps Utah win the CRC title. Then the football coach at Utah says, I want him on my football team. Scholarship signed, sealed, and delivered. Guys like Nate Ebner, Super Bowl champions, Maya Bitzer, Rochelle Stevens, an Olympian. All the best college players for the last, decade and a half have come through this tournament, the CRC. And now we're on the other side of COVID. It was the only real national tournament to play last year. And now we've got more than 100 teams coming to New Orleans, the top 32 men, the top 16 women. Lindenwood, back-to-back-to-back, three-peats, men and women. Can anybody knock them off? The CRC, this is the 12th tournament. I'm pretty excited about it, a rich history, and finally it's back on the biggest stage on CBS Sports Network.
Absolutely. Lindenwood Lions, all pressure on the defending champions. James, some changes to the format this year though.
Yeah, and positive changes. A lot of these programs are going to get a lot more opportunity to profile themselves in front of a national television audience. So single elimination style. Win and you're in. It pays to be a winner in this tournament. 32 teams on the men's side, 16 teams on the women's side. And what happens is when you lose, you're still in with a chance because there's got those different brackets. So you've got the Premier, Survivor, Challenge, and the Champions Cup.
That's right. So on the men's side, everyone's going to start in that round of 32. On the women, everyone in that 16. You lose, you just bump down to the next bracket. And then if you lose there, you bump down to the next one. And the great thing about this is the final of every single one of those is going to be played on CBS Sports Network in the stadium. So even if you lose your first round game, your second round game, you still have an opportunity to play on the brightest stage, the biggest stage in college rugby. From a fan experience, it's May Madness. It's understandable. It's something that we can recognize. It looks like March Madness. It puts rugby on the same package, in the same package, and on the same family of networks as March Madness. And I think it's recognizable for the fans to consume. They can see you move through the brackets. It's easy for them to understand that if you're not in the Champions Cup, you can move down to, or the Premier Cup, you can move down to the Survivors Cup. And best of all, also for the fans, more competitive games. I don't know, for the old CRC format, we're tired of some of those, or your traditional sevens format, tired of some of those blowouts and pool play just to get the point differential you need. That's gone now. So every game, you have something to play for. There's no and one of them is not point differential. So I think it just makes it for a better overall package for people to consume and for players to play in.
Well, I love that you mentioned the fans because fans, don't forget, we want you involved as well. Go to MadeMadness.com, get your bracket put in and see how you do. We are how many years into March Madness? No one's picked the perfect bracket. Maybe rugby can get the jump here on basketball and get it done in year one. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we will look at the 16 teams vying for that number one spot in the women's bracket. Welcome back to Selection Saturday. We focus now on the women's bracket. 16 teams, 2 regions. We will start in the West with the reveal. And James, who do you like coming out of this Western division?
It's pretty hard not to look at this Lindenwood University program. They are a prestigious program, 3-time champions, and they're just littered with talent. Well coached. Billy Nicholas is obviously their head coach. 21 champions, so they're coming in as the defending champions as well. And they've got some really, really good players.
Pat, obviously the returning champs, all eyes on them. Who do you think they run into out of this bracket?
Well, look, I think Penn State is the one that's glaring in at the other side, the 2 seed. The Nittany Lions have won this tournament 3 times, so has Lindenwood. So whoever wins it this year is going to have the supremacy all time. It's been a while for the Nittany Lions, but Kate Daly has a fantastic program there. She has a really stocked cupboard. But Lindenwood, and it's tough to look past those guys because they're the monster. They're the beast of the West. But they have a salty team up first in Boise State. Alan Billingsley and his program. The Broncos are not going to be an easy out. Michigan and Notre Dame College. Whoever wins that matchup sees Lindenwood in the second round. Notre Dame College, coached by Jack Neese. That would be a great scout for them, I would think, early on in his tenure.
Actually, in the semifinal of the Nationals, it pitted Penn State against Lindenwood, and Lindenwood won by 90 points.
Yeah. 90 points. That sting is still there for sure for Penn State. And you got to think, sevens is a great equalizer. It's the great leveler. You don't need 23 good players. You might just need 5 or 7 to get away with it. So I think Penn State has a chance. But a couple other teams we didn't touch on. Northern Iowa may have the best player in the entire division over here. And Maggie Burns, they're a very good team, well coached by Megan Flanagan. So the Panthers are pretty salty too. Definitely the Lions are the behemoth of this group, but it's not a bad group whatsoever and competitive throughout, I think.
Well, fascinating storylines as you have the past in Penn State, the future or present in Lindenwood. Are they ready to pass that torch on? We're going to find out coming up next weekend in New Orleans. But we welcome in Brianna Kim. No one knows more about rugby than Brianna Kim.
All right, thank you so much, Dan. Of course, we are going to take a look at the left side of the women's bracket first. We have Iowa versus Virginia Tech. Now, Iowa's coached by Kathleen O'Neill. They have been building their team up since February, since their annual Indoor Hawkeye Invitational Tournament. This is a team that's regularly in the mix for the Big Ten competition. They should never be counted out for a match. And of course, they will be facing Virginia Tech, a team that I know very well from my playing days. They're excited to return to CRCs as a historical participant. They played a lot of 15s recently, having most recently played in the D1 National Championship. They are hoping that their top 12 can make a statement at CRCs. Of course, they are without player Jetta Owens, who was a strong player for them last year, who recently graduated. Let's see what the rest of their team can do this year. Up next, we've got Southern Oregon versus Grand Canyon. Now, Southern Oregon won the Boise State qualifier. This is their first appearance to Sevens Nationals. This is the first team to represent the Cascade Conference in a national playoff in several years. So, of course, they are looking to use this championship weekend for exposure to bigger name schools and really just a launch pad to keep growing their team. You're looking at Grand Canyon on the other side. This is they're coached by Lindsay Mahoney, a former Atlanta's teammate of mine. You know that they are going to be out there swinging. They've had a hot start from the Southwest. They just wrapped up their 15 season. They had an impressive win over West Coast powerhouse Stanford before falling to BYU. Now, of course, as I mentioned, my former teammate Lindsay Mahoney is a sevens expert. You know this team is going to be very strong on the fundamentals. Moving on to Life versus Southern Nazarene. Life, of course, is a perennial favorite in this tournament. Southern Nazarene has quite the challenge ahead of them, but let's talk about them a little bit. They are coached by Eric Gilliland. They're a brand new varsity program in Oklahoma. They've got a young but athletic team. They're the new kid on the block, and of course, they are going to be coming to this tournament, building that rugby oasis and representing Mid-America. And then, of course, we go back to Life. They are coached by well-known Rosalind Chow. Now, this is actually her last tournament with the team. She has accepted the head coaching position with Brown University next year, so you know the team is going to want to go out and try and get this title for her. They are stacked with many All-Americans and some Eagles experience as well, so you know that they are going to put on quite the show this tournament. And lastly, we've got UC Davis versus Notre Dame. UC Davis is always a speedy, agile team. They've got great hands. Their backs are always very strong in the 15s tournament. They are going to be facing a strong Notre Dame side who is regularly in the mix in the top of the Big Ten, both on the 15s and 7 sides. The Fighting Irish senior class, the last group to attend the previous CRCs, you know that they are excited to be back.
There you have it, Pat. The East Coast just as competitive as the West. Who do you see coming out of this bracket to challenge one of those potential Lions teams?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Running Eagles, that's the team here. Life and Lindenwood is one of the biggest rivalries in all of college rugby. Raj Chow has all to play for. It's been mentioned on the show, probably mentioned again. She's moving on to Brown. It's her last ever tournament with Life. She wants to go out on a winning note, but there's some other good teams in here. One that you probably haven't talked about much or heard much of is Southern Nazarene. Brand new varsity program down in Oklahoma City. Bethany, Oklahoma, to be more specific, run by Eric Gilliland, one of the premier high school coaches down in that state. They have a ton of crossover talent, girls coming from the basketball team, from the softball team. So this is their first ever competitive season, but they're good, and they've already got quite a few wins under their belt. I'm excited to see how they go against Life in that first game. I think it may be a tougher ask than the Running Eagles are guessing. And then Grand Canyon, GCU is an up-and-coming program. Lindsay Mahoney played for the Headliners in PR7s, the first other pro sevens league in the world, and especially for women. And they're going to be a salty side too. In Southern Oregon, they won the automatic qualifier in Boise State. They deserve to be here. They punched their ticket. So definitely some good teams in the East to balance out the West.
James, your thoughts on the East?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Southern Nazarene team, this is going to be exciting. In fact, if you look at the pathway on both sides of the bracket, so you have them and then you have on the other side, you and I, there wasn't one player that played high school rugby in that program. So you've got one storyline on the other side, a lot of first-time rugby players, and then you come to the Southern Nazarene side that has a lot of crossover athletes, and this is a great opportunity for them. Once they get that taste of being able to be in a tournament like this, that's what hooks you to play rugby. You know, getting an opportunity to profile yourself on the national stage, nothing makes you want to come back more and tell your friends to join the team as well.
You don't know that when, Sally asked you to come out for the ragtag practice, that you might end up on national television playing on the big stage. And you're right, that's one of the cool things about this tournament for sure.
Yeah, the big question, is Maggie Burns a threat and Palamo off the women's bracket this year? Can she shoulder the load of expectation that falls on her out of Northern Iowa to get this done?
She's about as good as, if anybody can do it, it's Maggie. She's going to need some help. She's in a tough bracket, there's no question. But she'll acquit herself well. Look, could she put him all the way on her back and carry him all the way like Sam Sullivan did for Army a couple of years ago, almost knocking off Lindenwood? I don't know, we'll see. But if she doesn't and she falls short, so did Steph Curry and Davidson, and that was fun to watch. So I can't wait to watch Maggie Burns strap it on and see how far she can go.
Oh, well, talking of fun, it doesn't get any more enjoyable than this. With all your bracket busters, John Broker joins us for the first time tonight.
Thanks, Dan. Psyched to be here. Really looking forward to this CRC. It's going to be an incredible tournament. In terms of the women division, bracket busters might be a hard thing to say. I think, clearly Life and Lindenwood are the should-be teams to go to the final. Rosalind Chow is pretty much in one of her last tournaments with Life before she goes on to Brown to take over for the legendary Kathy Flores and has built a real good legacy of her own at Life. Billy Nicholas has developed a startlingly good program at Lindenwood, and these two have battled it out all the way through 15s and 7s for years to get to in the finals. So what you really want to talk about is some key players. We'll talk about them all later, but the safe prediction really is going to be, Life versus Lindenwood in the finals. But what I love about sevens, what everybody loves about sevens, is it just one mistake, one bounce of the ball, one card can just make a huge difference as to who's moving through your bracket. So we should really talk about some of the early games to watch. Round 1, UC Davis versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame doing well in 15s and 7s. UC Davis certainly coming on. Notre Dame College playing Michigan. And Notre Dame College played a lot of 7s as of late. They're really coming on. They're a strong team. They're going to be great in these early matchups, as well as Virginia Tech versus Iowa. Something to watch there. Some real speed in Iowa. They need to prove to themselves and everybody else how good they are. But later round matchups can be very interesting with the women's division based on what we saw. Lindenwood versus Notre Dame College in potentially a quarterfinal matchup. Like I said, Notre Dame College is on a really good trajectory, building that program. But, Lindenwood might be just an ask too far, just one too many questions for them. But another later matchup might be Grand Canyon versus Iowa. Grand Canyon beat Stanford. They're an up-and-coming program. Their coach, Lindsay Mahoney, is an accomplished sevens coach. They bring a lot to the table, and they're going to have to face an Iowa team that's got a little bit more history. So that's what to look for in these brackets for the women's division. Back to you guys.
Great stuff there from John Broker. As always, we will take a quick break. When we return, eyes shift. The men's bracket, 32 teams going to the Big Easy for the big championship. Selection Saturday continues here as now we shift focus over to the men's. 32 teams in 4 regions, and we will start where we left the women's on the East Coast. For the Eastern region, we welcome back Brianna Kim.
Stan, let's take a look at the Eastern Conference now. First up, we've got number 1 seed Kutztown, a very familiar name, taking on number 8 seed Maryland. Kutztown, we know them. They're coached by Greg Jones. They've been to the CRCs 7 times. This is no new affair for them. They've been building momentum throughout the spring. They won the Big Ten finale and Opry Sevens, hosted by the New England Free Jacks of MLR. Look stud senior Kakoa Kawe, who has been in chats with USA Rugby Scouts as of late. And of course, number 8 seed Maryland, coached by Jeff Sokin. For previous CRC appearances, they got strong local guys, and Jeff Connors, he's a Gonzaga product and also an Old Glory U23 player, and Roman Johnson-Bra, look out for his electric speed. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got 4 Iowa State versus 5 Louisville. Iowa State got their automatic bid after winning Southern Nazarene Sevens, coached by Ant Frine. They lost to Western Michigan last CRCs, who also knocked them out of the 2019 USA Sevens tournament. So they've made unfinished business their motto as they look to seek vengeance this year. Of course, Louisville, coached by Emil Walton, they automatically qualified after winning the MAC conference. It's also worthy to note that their head forwards coach from the 15s team, Kelsey Harris, is a 2-time former All-American and won 2 national championships with Penn State. We'll see if she's with them with the Sevens team in New Orleans, but nonetheless, that championship experience is hard to come by. Next, we've got number 3 seed South Carolina taking on number 6 Northeastern. Now, South Carolina got the automatic qualifier from winning the Southeastern Conference. They're coached by John Roberts. This is their 6th appearance at CRCs. Look for them to leverage that experience against a young Northeastern side. This team is coached by Tubridy. This is the squad that lost to the Kutztown team in Après Sevens earlier this spring. They're hoping to build off of their 7 successes in 2019 after being shut down, of course, due to COVID. And last but not least, we've got number 2 Penn State versus number 7 Fordham. We've got very familiar Penn State and Justin Hudley, who is their head coach. This will be their 11th straight appearance at CRCs. They've only lost out to Indiana in the Big Ten series, but they got a really nice mix of young and old, experienced sevens and inexperienced sevens players, and forwards and backs. Look for Jesse Capriati to bust through the defensive line with his speed, and captain Dalton Musselman to lead by example, unleashing his teammates into space and taking his own opportunities when given. Now, this number 7 Fordham side at first glance might not seem very interesting, but actually if you look at their head coaches, there's quite a storyline here. This team will command a lot of attention. Head coaches Federico Reinhardt and, of course, former English international and Rugby United New York player Ben Foden. Now, Ben Foden joined the 7 staff this spring. He, of course, has already injected invaluable knowledge into a heavily influenced Argentinian team that will look to pull off a big upset with a lethal attack versus Penn State.
And there you have the East, Pat. Very competitive. A lot of familiar names coming out of the East and some champions that we've seen before as well.
100%. Dartmouth, they won this thing in 2011, 2012. They've been to the quarterfinals and semifinals a million times. Kind of a bit of a season of adversity for them. They lost their head coach, James Willix, who moved down to Navy and Old Glory DC to take his step into Major League Rugby. They've got Kyle Sumption coming in. Problem is he's coming in mid-season because he's still with Army as of this Saturday, coaching them as an assistant through their 15s. They actually fell to a Brown in the Ivy Sevens, which doesn't happen very often. So Dartmouth is a proud champion, but they've got some adversity to overcome. They've got some good players in Mike Weir and Malcolm Robertson, who, if they're healthy, then they're going to be really, really salty on the sevens pitch. But I think Dartmouth has a little bit to prove here, maybe finding an underdog story instead of coming back as one of the reigning champions.
Yeah, some dark clouds over this Dartmouth program, James. Is there a dark horse, perhaps, that can come out of this division?
You know, I look at Notre Dame College. I think it's interesting. Quarterfinalists in 2021 last year, and it'll be interesting to see. They've got a really exciting young freshman player, Lucky McDonald, the Australian, a really talented player, well-coached, Jason Fox, former Sevens Eagle. It'll be interesting to see how they emerge through this pool stage.
Yeah, they've won quite a few tournaments this spring. You can't count them out. But I think another one you have to look at is, they're the number 1 seed here, but Indiana is one of the teams that I think can win this whole thing. The hometown Hoosiers, most of these guys are from Indiana, the state, or the surrounding states. You look at a lot of these guys. You just mentioned Lockie McDonald for Notre Dame College, coming all the way from Australia. Indiana, these kids are from the cornfields right around Bloomington, and they've got a really great squad. Will Chevalier is one of them. A lot of them play in the summer with the Chicago Lions, one of the more traditional, vaunted, historical Club Sevens programs. Will Chevalier has been an age grade All-American throughout every level of the age grade, and he's one of the standouts for this tournament. So I think the Hoosiers, not a dark horse, but I think that they're one of the teams that can win this thing.
Yeah, do we find the next Bryce Campbell coming out of that program as well? Born and raised Indiana boy, played at Indiana, so could be tough. Pat, I'm going to stay with you as we move to the South Division now, and an old friend of yours, Kyle Sumption. We talked about him a little bit with Dartmouth. Let's not forget the weekend Army had in the 15s game, booking their ticket to a national championship with a win over Lindenwood. Can they translate this over to the sevens, though?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to turn around if you're the Black Knights to go from 15s and turn around to sevens and do it that quickly. But we saw Cal; they did it at the CRC a number of years. It's not an easy feat. The Black Knights have done well in this tournament. They made the semifinals last year. They made the finals back in 2011. But there's been some famine in those years as well. So it's going to be a tough ask, especially when you look at Air Force. That is obviously a big rivalry. Two armed services going against each other in the first round. Few clubs have won more, albeit in 15s, national championships in Air Force. I think, James, you know a thing or two about that program. They're pretty good.
Yeah, coached by Denny Meredith now. They're a good program, and there's such an emotional rivalry when it comes to this matchup. And just to have them pegged against each other in the first round, there's no bigger game for these teams. And in fact, in the armed services and the rugby side, Army is the bar. That Army Air Force match, these guys, they'll be thinking about it now. There's going to be a lot of emotion in that, and it could actually be a bit of a roadblock or a little one in the grass in the back for Army as well. So they got to watch out for this Air Force side.
Memorial Day weekend, nonetheless, too. So a pretty exciting matchup for that as well. I also look at some of these other teams, like Iowa Central Community College. You talk about, Kyle goes from Dartmouth to Army in the same semester. We got Andre Greenup, who's now with Iowa Central Community College, was on the all-tournament team last year for McKendree, and now he's on another side. He's joined by guys like Dakota Southworth. Nicknamed Chuck after his reminiscence of Chuck Liddell, the UFC legend.
Iceman, yeah.
He brings some toughness to the pitch. So Iowa Central is not going to be an easy out. Cal Maritime, this is a small. What's great about the Premier Cup, right? Any team from any division can compete in this thing. If you're good enough, you can get in. Cal Maritime usually plays in small college, the lowest level of college rugby. They won the Boise automatic qualifier, decided to step up and challenge themselves against some of the best teams in the country. They got Minnesota in the first round. That's another team I'm looking for in this region for sure.
Yeah, Sean Lindersmith doing wonders up there for the Gophers program. You've both neglected to talk about the number one seed, Mount St. Mary's. They're number one, and you guys are just, no, we don't want to talk about them.
Mount St. Mary's Chesapeake Conference champions. The Chesapeake, they have a true series. So these guys were able to, week in and week out, prove that they're the best team in the Chesapeake. And the Chesapeake has a lot of the growing varsity programs and some of the ascending programs throughout the entire country over there. So that's not a small feat. Mount St. Mary's probably looked at maybe as the weakest number one in this group, but I wouldn't do that if I was any of the other teams in this region that could go up against them, because they're going to be really salty.
There you go, Mount St. Mary's fan at Pat Clifton on Twitter. You can get on there and let him know what you think about being called the weakest number one in these 32 teams. Boy, oh boy, we hit some of the heavyweights here. Lindenwood, we've talked about them on the women's side. They're just as impressive on the men's, Pat. Can they go back-to-back?
I think that's what everybody expects them to do. They are returning the MVP of this tournament last year in Evan Williams. They have Tyron Al-Jabori, another one in the long line of the family of Al-Jaboris who are quite good. But if those guys didn't make the plane, Lindenwood would have 10 guys just as good as them right behind them. They're the odds-on favorite. Tough ask for James Madison in the first round, but I've coached against James Madison, and these guys, they don't look up to anybody. So they're not going to put they're not going to put Lindenwood on a pedestal at all. So they're going to have a tough out in that first round, the Lions.
Yeah, you look at some of these other teams, if it's a crisp fall afternoon on a Sunday here in the US, Clemson versus LSU is salivating. We've got a potential Clemson-LSU rundown here. What are you thinking?
I mean, Clemson, we know the Troy Hall, the coach, former USA Eagle, he's done a great job with that program. In fact, his social media presence is just next level too. So you can get recipes as well as following your classic team. But at the end of the day, he's brought a different element of competition and competitiveness to that side. So it'll be interesting to see how they go on. And the beauty of a tournament like this is it doesn't matter really how good you were coming into it, because in a single elimination, you're only as good as your next game. So in this instance, he's going to have those guys up for that first game, and I think they could probably push through.
And they got Notre Dame in the first round. This is an exciting matchup if you look at the coaches. Justin Hickey really built that Clemson program, and now he's with Notre Dame. So he's going and coaching against his old team here in Notre Dame Clemson. I think that there's a little bit to look at there. And Wheeling is another really good program. Chief Chipfumbu is a really talented player who we also saw in the NCAA All-Star Championships just a few months ago. The Cardinals are very legit. They've got they won the West Virginia tournament. They won their own tournament. They won Pitt's tournament. So they've got some winning pedigree. There's some good teams in this bracket for sure. And St. Bonaventure.
We haven't mentioned them. Dewey Osborne.
Absolutely. Very good program. Sebastiano Villani. He's one of my dark horses to win MVP of this tournament. Very salty player. Very clever. Very sneaky around the breakdown on the quick taps. He's a lot quicker than he looks. They're going to be a good side. And they're going up against LSU in the first round, which is a rematch from last year's March Madness. So these two teams played each other in March Madness. Now this year they're playing in May Madness.
Oh, I love it. I like the consistency of alliteration there, the M's. It's working out well. Well, if you're at home, get online now, mademadness.com, get your brackets done, and the man to help you with those tougher picks, the dark horses, it's John Broker, and he's back for the men's bracket busters.
The men's side, there could be some bracket busters. There could be some upsets. A little less predictable across the board here. The top teams are as it shows in the bracket. They should move on and move far in this tournament. Indiana, coached by David Fee. Kutztown, coached by Greg Jones. Mount St. Mary's, coached by Jay Miles. Lindenwood, coached by Josh Macy, returning champions. They've got to be the early favorites out there. But there are some good teams, some good matchups that we'll talk about. Very good teams across the board. St. Bonaventure, 15's champion for NCR Division I. Penn State came in second in that one, but be looking to make amends here in the sevens. Both great teams. Army coming off a strong 15s tournament, has a lot of players. Great coach in Matt Sherman. AIC, American International College. South Carolina, Wheeling, great program. Mike Geibel's building down there. Harvard, Dartmouth, Notre Dame, all really good schools here with some very, very good players and a lot of individual players that can make a huge difference. We'll talk about that a little later. One star and one really standout player for some of these teams can make a huge difference. In terms of matchups, if you look at round one, really, I look at some of the 6 versus 3s are going to be very interesting. You have Dartmouth, very strong program, a lot of sevens history, taking on number 6, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech went so far in 15s on a player-coach program. They still have that. They have this belief where they just play really well. So that could be a very interesting matchup from the get-go. Number 3, Iona versus number 6, Iowa Central. Iowa Central hasn't played as much, sevens this season as some other teams. Iona very strong, won the Liberty Conference. They're ranked number 3, number 6, Iowa Central. Great coaching, great players. They just got a very good thing going there. Be another interesting matchup to watch. Another 6 versus 3 is Harvard versus Wheeling. Harvard has an international sevens player, Ryan Santos, taking the lead, played for the Philippines. And Wheeling has been building just this incredible program of international players around the country. Like I said, Mike Geibel's doing a great job there. Guys like Chief Chipfumbu, we'll talk about later, just can bring a lot to the table. So that 3 versus 6 should be a very interesting matchup there. And then a 2 versus 7, Penn State, very good, coached by Justin Hunley. Justin Hunley, a very precise coach, a very good coach, playing number 7 Fordham. Number 7 Fordham has a couple of, Argentinian-born players. They have a lot of X factor. That could be an interesting matchup as well. Later on in the tournament, I'd really look for some second-round matchups between St. Bonaventure and the winner of Harvard versus Wheeling. That should be an interesting one. You would have to give it to Wheeling at the moment, as well as Indiana having to take on AIC. AIC, just a constantly good program out of Springfield, Massachusetts, may really give somebody a run for their money. So watch for those in the second round. Watch for all these teams as this goes on.
Great stuff again, as always, from our good friend John Broker for all your bracket needs. We will take one more break. When we return, we will get the lowdown on who we think will be raising the championship at the end of proceedings at May Madness, and also who our MVP players are to watch. All that and more coming up after the break. Thanks for staying with us here on Selection Saturday. May Madness Sevens coming back to New Orleans this year in what promises to be one of the most exciting CRCs to date. We're going to cross over to John Broker for the last time as he goes through his players to watch for the tournament.
Let's talk men's players to watch. Great players out there. You got to start with Lindenwood, of course. A name that's familiar to rugby players in America crosses Tyran Al-Jabouri. What a rugby family. Another player in Lindenwood. They also have Nick Hardrick out of Penn High School. Great player. One of Josh Macy's favorites out there. Indiana, Will Chevalier, Case Fleck, two senior leaders on this team, or older leaders on this team, playing very well. Kutztown, Kikoa Kauwe, just a great talent that they certainly have there, along with a building program, an established program but more players coming in all the time. And Mount St. Mary's has a key defender and a key speedster in Chris Cleland. But again, just like the women across this, there are players everywhere. And I said that one bounce of the ball, that one change, if these players have their right day, they can make a huge difference. Ben Kelly for Army, a New Jersey native, just playing incredibly well. Lorenzo Villani for St. Bonnie's, just incredible. Iona, Brendan Buckley, Cameron DeGiorgio, tremendous players there. And Wheeling, Chief Chipfumbu, we talked about him before. Josh Blankenship plays prop in 15s and has cut down to play 7s, a fierce defender there, according to Mike Geibel. And then, Harvard, Ryan Santos, Northeastern, Alex Parsiak. They're great players out in the men, a lot of players to watch. Should be very fun. And as we said, on their day, any of these players could inspire any of these teams to go far in this tournament. Women's players to watch can be very interesting. You got to start with those top 2 teams. Life as a freshman, Nina Mason, tremendous decorated player playing as a freshman, was a star in the NCR 15s championships as a fly half. She can make a big difference and really make a big statement on the 7 stage at this tournament. She'll be playing with players like Autumn LoCicero, who's a USA Falcon player. So there's a good blend there on life of players to keep watching. And Lindenwood, the other top team, you look at Sativa Tarao Piakuru, just all over the field, playmaker, makes the team play very well. But again, across the field, there is a lot of talent there. Michigan has Katie Gale running the show, very good playmaker, very important person. Notre Dame College, Aviana Mateo, she's a senior captain, again, a person that makes that team tick. And then you look at a team like University of Northern Iowa. They have Maggie Burns, they have Ciara Standerson-Edwards, Aubrey Burr. Have been playing together for a while, these players. They're really looking to cap off this season on a high. Great team to watch, a lot of good players out there. The women's division is going to be full of stars across the board.
Thanks, John. Some interesting players within that group, and we're going to do just the same now. James, who is your potential MVP starting on the women's side?
For me, it's going to be really, really hard to overlook Sativa Tara Pihikuru, the Lindenwood player. She is excellent. 8-time national championship. 8-time national champion. How's it even possible?
Yeah, that's got to be a record for sure. She's a monster on the field. Just tears through the midfield for everybody. She was the MVP of this tournament last year. Absolutely terrifies teams. I mean, literally injured so many players last year, some of them didn't want to come back. That's how good she is. She's a mountain for Lindenwood. She's definitely a player to watch. Another one I got my eye on is Autumn LoCicero. She's going to be running against her for the rival for life. She's maybe the best player in this entire tournament. If Life's going to win this thing and they're going to beat their rivals, they're going to need Autumn LoCicero to have a big day. She's an Eagle for sure and has a bright future, I think, with the national team. And so for me, she's my MVP.
Yeah, that could be a great finals matchup. 8-time champion. Take that, Tom Brady. All right, moving on, James. Your final 4 here. Who do you like?
So looking at the bracket, this is a tough one, although I've made it pretty easy. So Life on one side, I've got Grand Canyon. I think Grand Canyon, they've been doing a lot of good things with the program. They've dedicated a lot of resources and you've seen them kind of sneak through. I think this is their opportunity to make it to the next level. On the other side, for me, I can't look past Lindenwood and Penn State. Penn State is trending again after kind of falling off the wagon, but they've gotten some momentum back. They're the most storied women's program in USA Rugby, and I think that is a great storyline that will lead to an exhilarating semi-final.
Any changes in your 4, Pat?
Just a couple. I'm going to throw Southern Oregon in there. I'm going to give them the first round upset over GCU. These women earned their way into this tournament. They are coming in, just conversations with them, I can tell they have a chip on their shoulder. I'm going to pick them as the dark horse to come out of the East and make it all the way to the Final Four. And then Northern Iowa. I think that they could pip Penn State over there in that bracket for sure. Maggie Burns, we've said her name a million times. She's very good. Flanagan's a very good coach. That's a very good program, UNI. A long history of winning. So I've got UNI coming out of that one and beating Penn State. They're going to have to keep a close eye on their heels to avoid that upset, I think, the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, 2 smart guys here. But if you want the real skinny on the MVP and the Final Four, we'll cross to Bree Kim again, who's got her picks.
All right, Dan, my Final 4 for the women's side. From the East, I'm taking Life and Grand Canyon. And from the West, I'm taking Lindenwood and Penn State. Of course, Life, Lindenwood, and Penn State, really strong, well-known, both 15s and 7s programs alike. These are just really strong collegiate rugby programs and have been for the last few years. I don't think that's going to change this tournament. And Grand Canyon may, of course, the smaller name out of these 4, but I think Coach Lindsay Mahoney has done a lot with this program. I think they're going to pull off some upsets and they're going to catch a lot more eyes this weekend. As for the players to watch, there's quite a few. I'm just going to name 3 here. Susie Adegoke and Autumn LoCicero from Life. Adegoke was on the 7s Falcons roster. She's in the Hawkeye development program. She's a 2-time M.A. Sorensen nominee, and she's a D1 Elite All-American several times. She's got too much experience and explosiveness. Her speed is unreal. Autumn Locicero, she's a scrum half for the USA Falcons. She scored against Australia. She's the only collegiate player that played at Premier Rugby Sevens this last fall for the Loggerheads. These two are going to be boosting life, I think, to the final. And then, of course, you have Eti Hungatau, who is a capped 15s Eagle, plays for Lindenwood. She is the youngest women's Eagle ever to be capped. She's played high school All-Americans, both in 7s and 15s. She's also up for M.A. Sorensen Player of the Year this year. I think you're going to see another Life Lindenwood showdown in the final. The question is, can Lindenwood make it a four-peat? They've already done the Triple Crown. I'm going to say yes, so my MVP is Eti Hungatau.
There you go. Great stuff from Bree. We'll go back to Bree once we get through the men's as well. Pat, I'm going to start with you this time. I did the right thing by James last time. You get first pick this time. Who's your men's MVP in Final Four?
Look, I could pick any Lindenwood Lion if I wanted and say that's the guy that's going to lead the tournament in tries. But I'm going to go with Sebastiano Villani out of St. Bonaventure. He is probably not going to score the most amount of tries, but he'll probably create the most tries on the weekend. Usually plays scrum half in 15s. Will pivot between halfbacks in 7s. This guy has got the best boot, maybe the best mind, some of the best skills in the tournament. My pick is for him. It's a little bit of a dark horse, but I think he is definitely, if I was picking fantasy football style, he'd be one of my top picks. He's at the top of my board for players in this tournament, for sure.
James, who do you like?
I'm going to go with a player, and I'm going to lead a little background here. Okay. So this is a player who has a 4.0 GPA in biochem. So you know he's a smart guy. And he's a guy that doesn't leave it on the field. He takes it back to his dorm room with him. He's actually got turf in his dorm room to get those late night training sessions in. It's Evan Williams with Lindenwood. I think, it may sound cliche picking the MVP again, but when you've been MVP once and you're a leader in a side like this, that experience is what will get them through to the big dance, and I think he's going to put his hand up.
Turf in the dorm room. What do you think your residential supervisor says when you start laying the turf down?
Depends if he's on the receiving end of the tackle you're giving him or her later on.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I haven't been into many dorm rooms, Pat, but I don't know if there's a lot of space there to be putting turf down and what you can actually do on the turf as opposed to carpet. So Lindenwood, time for an upgrade on your carpet in your dorms, or turf in all the dorms for the rugby team. I'm on board for that. Top four, who do you like?
On the men's side, it's going to be Indiana. And here's the big surprise over here facing Indiana is going to be Cal Maritime. I got the Keel Haulers going all the way to the Final Four.
Keel Haulers getting through.
Look, John Blah is a very good player for them. They have talent through and through. They are in a high-performance environment. They train more than you think. And they're well coached. Steve Hyatt, former Eagle, he's a fantastic coach. I like the Keel Haulers. As I said, they won their way into this tournament. They won that Boise automatic qualifier. I got both of the Boise automatic qualifier teams going to the Final Four on the men and women's side. And then on the other side, I can't not pick Lindenwood. I think that would be crazy. And they're going to go up against Kutztown. Kutztown, this could be the year for them. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride at the CRC. I think this could be the year that they get to go up and say those nuptials.
Ooh, third time's a charm for Kutztown. James, are you going to go against your old team in Air Force here and pick the Keel Haulers to come out of that region as well?
I think, to be honest, Army's going to come through on that side of the bracket. I think they've just been doing too many good things, and then they're 15. The momentum they're going to take from this 15 season, and who knows, they could be national champions by this time. So if they come through, I think they're going to make it. I think on the other side, Dartmouth, I think they're going to have enough to be able to edge Indiana, and then on the other side of the bracket, I'm just going to mirror you. Kutztown from me and Lindenwood. I think Lindenwood's got far too much class. They know what it takes to be able to take every game like it's a final, and that's what it takes to win this tournament.
All right, we'll get the correct answer now. Bree Kim for the final time. We'll go through her men's MVP and Final Four.
Well, guys, maybe I'm just doing this to make yourselves look even better, but this is my Final Four lineup. I, too, think that Dartmouth is going to pull off a big upset against Indiana. I'm taking Army, taking number 1 seed Kutztown, also taking number 1 seed Lindenwood. There's just too much firepower, too much perennial experience from these teams. I think it'll be a very exciting matchup for these regions. For the MVP, watch out for Kekoa Kawe. This is someone that we've already talked about, and I mentioned him before. Scrum half, first all-team Rugby East and NCR D1 All-American selection. Of course, vice-captaining this side. This guy is a super smart, very dynamic player and just really has fantastic all-around skills to set his teammates up and also take some tries himself. He's already been contacted by USA Rugby, as I mentioned, and he's going to be a top prospect for MLR next year. Look for him to take his team to the top. I think he's going to be your MVP this year.
There you go. Thank you so much, Bree. Gentlemen, that wraps us up. What are our final thoughts going into CSC? Pat, obviously a very close connection to you as tournament director. You wear many hats for this tournament. It's got to be exciting getting close. Finally, that crescendo is being met. and you get to actually go to New Orleans and watch rugby be played.
Look, I've been around the CRC for a long time. The Collegiate Rugby Championship from Jump Street I've been around, and this is going to be the biggest and baddest yet. There's going to be more than 100 teams in one parking lot, one stadium, the largest rugby-only stadium in North America. There's nothing not to love. Back on national television, CBS Sports Network. Every game that's not there that's in the stadium, you'll be able to find on the Rugby Network. Future Eagles, future Major League Rugby, future PR7s pros. I just don't know what there isn't to love. And a ton of energy going to be down there in New Orleans. 100-plus college teams and all the people that come with it, that's what I'm excited for.
James?
The way it makes these players feel. And if you look back over the years, what do people talk to you about? I saw them on TV. I saw collegiate rugby on national television. The ability for that to be able to penetrate the USA game and filter down to all levels is amazing, but what it means for the players is even more exhilarating. The opportunity to play on national television. You know, there's guys coming from programs that put millions of dollars into athletic programs, and they don't get the opportunity to be on national television like this. So this is a great opportunity for the players and a great opportunity for them to put their hands up for both national honors and professional ambitions.
Yeah, it certainly sets a brilliant stage here for all our competitors. We will be back on May 28th on the Rugby Network and CBS Sports. Great partners for the CRC, for Bree Kim, John Broker, Pat Clifton, and James Patterson. Our behind-the-scenes crew and Ryan Ginty. I'm Dan Power, and we will see you May 28th for kickoff.